Hale and Sara Empey from Mine Center Public School, part of the Rainy River District School Board, and hear about their outdoor classroom, which they've been creating for more than 6 years now. Marge and Sara, thanks for joining us today. We're going to do full introductions in a few minutes. I want to jump into a video filmed at camp a few years ago. But first, I want to talk about where Mine Center Public School is located. Mine Center is located in Treaty 3 territory, which is also known as the Northwest Angle Treaty. It is the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe and also home to Métis. The land and its people have been teachers to myself and the Robertson program for many years now. We are forever grateful to the generosity that's been shown to us. I want to take a moment to name some of the communities that have contributed and collaborated to our math and land-based learning. Onegaming First Nation, Big Grassy First Nation, Windigo Island First Nation, Lac La Croix First Nation, Couchiching First Nation, Neketchewenin First Nation, and Nigagoonsminnekonning and Seine River First Nations, the two communities located on either side of Mine Center PS. Today, I find myself in Treaty 13 territory, also known as the Toronto Purchase Treaty. I am committing to learning more about the history of this land, which continues to be home to the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and our treaty partners, the Mississaugas of the New Credit.
What do you like about it?
I like the trails.
Okay, Carl?
I like the new trail.
The new trail?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to try that one today. Usually, when we first arrive, we sit in our little area here where we have a picnic table and some benches, and we spend just a short little bit of time talking about a topic. Right now we're doing birds, so we're talking about their nests and the different kinds of birds and if we can hear birds. What kind of birds? What do we hear?
Chickadees.
Chickadees? What else? We had heard through a friend that if you put yarn, colored yarn down on the ground in the spring, that the birds will use that to build as part of their nests. So we had done an inquiry into birds and their nests and just investigated what their nests are all made out of. We decided, okay, springtime, let's try that. So all the kids put colored pieces of yarn all over the trails and all over the camp. And over a couple of weeks, all the yarn had disappeared. Bird nests are hard to find. So anyway, it so happened, we were just lucky, I guess, but the tree that's in the middle of our camp has a nest in it with a blue piece of yarn in it. So it actually happened. We were so happy. But it was like about right here, stuck in there. We kind of stuck to the two trails that are close on either side of the road. But we have a third trail that's marked with blue ribbon that goes up on a huge rock there and down the other side.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the castle right there with the moat.
I keep looking at it every day.
Yeah, we see it lots, but we don't think of it as a castle anymore.
Now I'm going to show you my favorite tree. Yeah. My tree color. It has red and red is my favorite color.
I think you need to have things like the bird feeders we've got up.
Yeah.
So really interested in the plants and little animals, and it sparks their interest in math or science.
Oh, these are blueberries. Do not step on them.
It was one late fall, and there had been no snow. Like it was like almost the end of November and no snow, and we were hiking on that trail over there near the castle. And somebody saw something white and thought, oh, it's a garbage bag. They just kept watching it, and then it started to move. So as they got closer, it hopped away, and it was a white rabbit. So we studied rabbits. In this area over here, we set out our little experiments with grass and seeds and of course carrots. After a couple of days, we came back to check to see if anything had been eaten. We did find out that the seeds were gone, the bagels were gone, but the carrots were still there. So we learned that they don't eat carrots.
We would find rabbits and partridges, squirrels and deers and mice and birds and wood ticks.
Wood ticks?
Yeah,
They don't scare you?
those guys do, 'cause they're bad right now.
And it's so simple. It's not like extravagant. It's like you could make it state of the art, but it's a place for kids to come, enjoy, relax, and it's theirs.
So has camp changed, or is it still a lot like that?
I would say it's a lot like that. We have upgraded a little bit. We've since then we have built a new lean-to and made ourselves a mud kitchen and have maybe another sitting area off of trail. So there's been a few differences.
Okay, but let's jump into one of the activities that we saw, and that is nests. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came to be, and what are some of the explorations that you did with your kindergarten students?
So the kids have looked at nests and examined nests because we have a bit of a collection over the years, and we try not to disturb nests now that I've realized that birds may reuse their nests. So we try not to disturb any nests and collect more. We just use what we've had. So we kind of deconstruct the nests and see what they're made out of. They talk about the shape and the size. We let them handle them so they can see how heavy they are and get a sense of how they feel. Um, we've had parents in for activities with birds nests where we've handed out bird nests and they've um, worked together as partners and just examined what's the nest is made of, how the nest is made, um, and try to guess maybe what kind of bird made that nest. We've tried to measure the circumference and the diameter of the nest with uh, string and putting it or see how round it is and how wide across it is. We've also tried to measure the capacity of the nest with filling it with see how many cubes would fit in there. So we've done a few things. We've also had them try to make their own nests, gather materials from around the camp because after examining the nest, they can kind of figure out, okay, this is what you need to make a nest. So they've tried to make their own nests and put it in a little container and set it out, hoping that a bird might use it or they'd get attention of some of the birds.
Well, now we'll do some introductions. My name is Zachary Peterson, and I am the program coordinator at the Robertson Program for Inquiry-Based Teaching in Math and Science. And we are part of the Dr. Eric Jackman Institute of Child Study, which is at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, which is a part of the University of Toronto. And so the Robertson Program, we look to find new ways of teaching math and science to students around the province and around the country. And today I am joined with Marge Hale and Sara Empey from Mine Centre Public School. And I'm hoping that both of you can maybe, I don't know, give a little bit of a brief introduction about yourselves. Marge, why don't we start with you?
Okay, I've been in the kindergarten program now for probably about 6 or 7 years, and so most of my career has been with older kids, but I have really enjoyed being in the kindergarten class. Yeah, I've been at the same school for many, many years, so I'm very familiar with the school and the area around the school and the students and their families. Um, yeah, I have enjoyed my time in kindergarten, and starting this camp has been definitely one of the highlights of my career.
Great. Sara?
I'm Sara Empey. I am from Fort Francis area, and I grew up out in the bush all the time. So when I came to work at Mine Center School, and Marge asked me, "Do you like going in the bush?" I definitely said yes. And so I worked at the school for 4 years, and then we had a small enrollment year. So as the early childhood educator, I got moved to another school for 2 years, and this is my year I got moved back. So this will be my 5th year working with Marge at Mine Center School. And our outdoor classroom is definitely a highlight. And it's a highlight of my week, but also the kids' weeks.
Well, I'm happy you're back for sure. We were all supposed to be joined tonight with Verna White. She's the Ojibwe teacher at Mine Center. Can maybe one of you speak to Verna's role in the school community?
Okay, Verna is our native language teacher. So with us increasing our time going to camp, she is right there with us, supporting us out at the outdoor classroom as well. Yeah, she's unfortunately cannot be here this evening. So
Yeah, I know.
she's a valuable asset to our little team here.
Right, and I know we're disappointed that you can't be here tonight, Verna, but we're so happy that you were part of this planning process, and hopefully we're able to touch upon some of the amazing work that you do at camp with Marge and Sara. Okay, the Robertson program first connected with Mine Center Public School when we were doing some research around spatial reasoning in mathematics. Here you can see Marge participating in some of that research. And after that, we started to host a conference in Treaty 3, a fall harvest conference with the Rainy River District School Board and Seven Generations Education Institute. And Mine Center, you two participated in both of the conferences we had. The first time you presented your work, and I think you hosted a small group. The second time, you actually hosted more than 100 educators from around Ontario at camp. Your students gave tours. And here we have our founder, Bev Caswell, the Robertson founder, former director. She has recorded a few words for you.
Hi, Marge and Sara and Verna. Greetings from Southern Ontario. Just wanting to say a huge thank you for sharing your outdoor camp with us and for sharing the rich variety of immersive learning experiences that you've provided for your students and showing what is possible when you make that dedication and you bring your 4- and 5-year-olds onto the land on a regular basis. I'm forever grateful for the times that you empowered your students to become tour guides for all of the educators attending our conferences. Their keen observations and insights, their relationship with the land, and their sense of wonder and awe inspired all of us. First of all, as more and more people realize that connecting with nature is the way forward, your work is a template. It provides a living, breathing blueprint for educators across the province, across the country, and internationally to follow suit. Secondly, the fact that Verna has agreed to share cultural teachings allows students to reconnect with the land and become aware of and gain cultural knowledge, preparing students as leaders for the future. Miigwech, Verna. Thirdly, in later grades, students are often asked to memorize the scientific method. Well, your students are living the scientific method. What you're doing is allowing students to hone their observational skills, you're building on their propensity for asking questions and being curious. I was thinking that long before it became popular to think of nature as school, you were doing nature inquiry. Thank you again for reminding us of nature as school, nature as teacher, nature as healer of planet Earth and its inhabitants. Thank you, and hope to see you soon. Bye.
So there's Bev at camp with one of your students. And actually, I think this is one of our later visits to camp.
Oh, that's the anthill. That's a huge anthill. They can't get over the size, and definitely notice if someone has put their toe there, or
Oh, yeah.
now it's a big mound of snow, so it's
Right.
kind of blended in with the environment. But yeah, for sure, they pay attention to it.
One time
Great.
there was a bear that had dug in it too, so they got to see the like dispersal of the sand and everything.
Well, how did you know it was a bear?
Because I think Gail said it was.
It was pretty big mark.
Yeah.
Foot mark, track,
Wow.
paw mark.
Okay, let's talk about where camp is.
Well, camp is about a 10-minute walk from our school down a little country road. Yeah, camp is not that far away, which is what we wanted initially when we picked a spot for camp.
Okay, and so here we're looking at pictures of where you're walking to camp, and then some shots of some of the kids with.
We were doing I think it was a walking challenge with the staff. So I was wearing one of these pedometers, and the kids were curious as to what it was about. And it was a step counter, and we're trying to get to, I think it was 10,000 steps a day for a month or something. And so the kids were interested in what this was. So we asked the kids, like, well, how else could we use it? So they wanted to know how many steps it took to get to camp. And some of the kids, it wasn't very many steps. And some of the kids, it was like 3 times as many, because they didn't just go to camp. They went to camp, and they went here and there, and they went in the ditch, and they were back on the road. But then we were able to talk about why it was different amount of steps for different people. And like one student might be taller than another, so he would have maybe less steps because he's taking bigger steps.
And how about this? What's going on? There's some building. Is that patterning?
Yes, that's patterning on the bench. They were trying to use found materials to make a pattern. So in this one, I can't tell with the picture right now if it's rock leaf stick or if it's leaf stick, but I think it's rock leaf stick.
Oh, that one there was just an accounting activity. They're pumpkin shapes with the numbers 1 to 10 written on them, and we had hung them on trees along the trail. So as we were hiking through, we would find one, and when we got to the end of the trail, we had to sequence them in the correct order from 1 to 10.
All right, what's this?
Those are some of the leftover building materials I had gotten from my family. And this is Coulter, and he's making a ramp, or kind of like a ramp, a walking path for just having fun building with pieces of board and 2x4s, piece chunks.
Okay, how about here? What's going on?
This is part of the mud kitchen. They're probably offering you some nice mud soup. It's mostly about free play. We've just kind of set out, we've gotten some donations of old pots and muffin tins and cake pans and big pots and spoons and anything that kind of would go with a little kitchen. And they just love it. And they've got an oven, and they're always making up something to eat, and making up their recipes. So it's mostly free play.
Okay.
There's a lot of learning too that happens informally through the play. The one student he had a strainer, and he wanted to fill it up because it was a bucket. And he soon discovered that all the holes in the strainer don't make it very easy to fill. So then a friend came along and gave him a bucket to put underneath it so he could fill the bucket. And then when he lifts the strainer, all the water comes back into the bucket.
Well, we've done fall harvest activities, and it's just a way to connect our students to some of their traditional activities. So a majority of our students are First Nation, and so the activities that we do would be something they would do most often with their family or their grandparents, or someone in the community would be doing it.
Good. Well, I actually had a chance to talk to Dana Allen. She's the Anishinaabe culture coordinator at Mind Center PS. She helped organize Fall Harvest. So we're going to now listen to a little bit about what she had to say about planning this event with your students.
Way back when, this is how each community would prepare for winter. So like preparing the wild rice and like skinning moose and all of that, that's kind of their practices of how they prepared for winter. So they had food for winter and stuff. What I was hoping was just that they had fun, they were engaged in all of the activities that they did, and that they took away some of the teachings. Like even talking with my coco, like maybe a lot of the kids don't have that access to an elder like that, and where they get to learn all of these valuable teachings and lessons about just being an Anishinaabe person, because a lot of them come from that background. My stepdad actually, he did the plucking ducks and the singeing with them, and just kind of, you know, told them the teachings around that and what they did with that. And then my uncle did the fish filleting, and I think he talked a lot about how we give back to the land. So they ask questions like, well, what do we do with the guts, and what do we do with this and that? And one of the teachings that they learned was they give it back. So he puts all the guts back into the water for, you know, eagles and different types of animals. So that's how they give back. And the same thing with the ducks. They learned how they're giving back to the land as well. And then roasting rice was my Auntie Gail. And then the last one was teachings with my grandmother, Nancy Jones. They believe that it is really important for our children to be connected to the culture and to have these teachings in school as well. So, and that's kind of what I do, is plan these cultural days and find different ways of bringing our culture into the school.
Let's talk a little bit about snow, because winter is upon us. I know you guys do a lot around snow. Well, let's just start there. What's some of the things that you do?
Okay, so I guess one of the things that comes to mind, a couple of years ago, we decided that we would measure snow for the entire season. A big endeavor because it meant that every time we went to camp, we were finding us. We were actually bringing along materials so that we could measure the depth of the snow. And I tried to make it as scientific as I could, choosing the same location and near the same location anyway, and using the same measuring stick and all that. So anyway, we tracked it through the whole season, from the first snowfall, pretty much the first snowfall, up to when it melted in the spring. So then once we displayed our tracking, which was just cubes stuck together. Our non-standard measurement were the cubes. We stuck them together and taped them so they would stay together. And that picture there, and we just laid them out. Every time we went, we labeled it, the date, and set them down. And then so you can see that it's gaining some length as the year goes on, and then it's showing that it's getting smaller as we come into the spring melt. So it was a good visual picture of the depth of the snow. And of course, when we were out there, the kids were measuring, comparing it to themselves, how high it came up on themselves. You know, some of them, it came up quite a ways because we had a lot of snow that winter. So it was interesting. and we would play around with snow a bit. We would pour warm water down and watch it melt, and they were fascinated by looking down the hole because you could see that would melt right down to the ground, I guess. Of course, you got lots of snow, so that's going to lead into studying about tracks in the snow. Well, we start investigating tracks as soon as we get onto the road, off of the main road into our road, and I have a track identification page that the kids look at. And I start out with just a few tracks because I don't want to overwhelm them. So I we kind of focused on the tracks that we know that were good high chance that we're going to see. For example, the rabbit is one that for sure we're going to see. So at this point, at this point of the year, they all know what the rabbit track looks like. You can identify that track. So then we increase it over time as different tracks. We've got the deer track, we've got mice, we've got fox. So there's the tracking page, identification page has quite a few tracks on it. So we have, what were you going to say, Sarah?
Oh, I said the squirrel's also a popular one that we see lots of.
Yeah. So so it's nice that once the snow is there, they can actually now they get a visual picture of okay, who else is at camp besides us? Because now they can actually see evidence that we can say the rabbits live here, but now we can actually see that they live here. Lately, we've measured the length of a rabbit foot and we compared it to our foot. We used non-standard units. We used the cubes, laid it down inside there was enough snow that you could, there was an imprint, so we could just lay the cubes right inside the track. And then they put their footprint right up against the track of or the paw print of the rabbit, so they could actually see.
My group, after we had measured how big the feet were, they were also looking at how far apart the tracks were. So we had measured how big a rabbit hop was and how big a squirrel hop was, and they compared it. And then when we got back onto the road, we had measured it out and they were practicing trying to jump as far. And the rabbit was really hard. They couldn't do it from just standing, they had to take a running jump. But the squirrel one they can do from standing right where they were.
This display that's showing now, if you look carefully, you can see that there are track stories.
Yes.
Which I've tried to pick out the ones that have the least amount of variation of tracks on there so that they can kind of look and study.
Verna has been teaching an animal a week to the students in native language class. And so they are learning the Ojibwe name for the animal. So on the screen, there's a moose, which is moons. And I have taken the pictures of the animals we've done so far and put them on a piece of paper, and that is their password to get in from second recess. So they have to tell me whichever animal I point to the name in Ojibwe, and if they don't know, then I'll tell them, and then it's reinforcing so that they're learning the animals, so they don't forget the ones that we've done weeks past. So yeah, Verna's been teaching them the names of the animals, and she's been doing crafts. We have the moose. We also have the Wagush. She did a really cute fox.
Very nice. Okay, let's talk about some of your work around trees, because I imagine you do quite a bit.
Yeah, we have always done lots of activities around trees, and it's pretty easy to do because we're in an area where there's a lot of trees and there's a variety of trees. And in years past, I have assigned, or I've not really assigned, but I've had kids pick their own tree. It becomes their tree for the year, and so they identify the tree and they learn how to its name in Ojibwe, and we hang a sign on the tree with their picture and what it's called, and so every time they go to camp, they have to make sure that they have gone and visited their tree. So what I was finding was that there were so many trees to try to learn that we weren't really learning very much. So and remembering very much. So this year I've decided that okay, we're just going to focus on one tree at a time. So right now we're focusing on cedar, and it's going much better. Everybody can identify a cedar, and they know that it's medicine, and you can place it in your house for protection. We have cedar hanging in our school. So with trees, we can do quite a bit for math. We did a lot of measuring the circumference, and we've measured logs that have fallen down. We have measured the height of small trees. If they find a tree that's as tall as they are, and measure it. Or we've also found trees at different stages of growth. So the little one and then a bigger one, kind of putting them in sequence by size. We've also looked at leaves, comparing leaves, ordering leaves by size. We've been looking at pine cones and sorting pine cones, making patterns with pine cones. Lots you can do when you just talk about the tree itself as the life cycle of a tree, the uses of a tree, how important a tree is to the environment. There's so much you can get into in areas of science.
Yes. So this is us. This is Joan Moss and one of your students looking at a tree during one of our visits. And I thought this would be a nice time to actually show a little clip from Julie Comey, who has been to Mind Centers Camp many times. And here she's talking, more reasons why we are so fascinated with your work.
I first visited the Mind Center Kindergarten when I was at a conference organized jointly by U of T and the Rainy River School Board. A few years later, I returned as part of a small team from the Robertson program to work with Marge and Sara in developing math ideas that might authentically fit with the outdoor learning. Over several visits, we got to know the kids well. The math was exciting, but even more striking was seeing children so intently observant, keenly noticing and identifying so many features of their environment. As they enthusiastically learned to name the plants and animals, their ability to discriminate the fine details grew dramatically. What was so lovely to see, and so counter in a way to typical kindergarten practice, was the way in which Marge and Sara drew children in with their own quiet interest, invited them, enticed them, but never demanded their attention. If children on the sidelines were pursuing their own ideas, they had leeway to do so. There was an uncommon trust in the kids that penetrated every aspect of the outdoor program, including a faith in their ability to manage their own safety, monitor their and their friends' well-being, and function as fully contributing members of the group. The kids rewarded this trust with a joyful independence and a remarkable maturity. Play and learning were truly integrated in a way that's quite rare to see.
Thanks, Julie, very much for those words. And that's just a great opportunity to segue into some of the work you guys do around plants at camp. So I want to hear, what you've done in the past and what you're doing now.
Okay, well, in the fall time, I'll start there because it's always fascinating to see the mushrooms when they spring up in the fall. And our students are just keen to see them, keen to find them, and we have them on the playground at school. So even at recess time, they are looking for mushrooms and noticing them growing on the grass. So that is really, really neat to watch. And I'm not quite sure what the fascination is, but I think it might be the size and the shape and the colors, because one kid commented that, oh, this looks like a little Smurf house. So it was pretty cool. So we also have in the years past, we've also picked cranberries that grow right by the school, and another class, not our class, made them into a dye and dyed some t-shirts. But we've also identified flowers in the spring. We have a flower identification page that I made up just for just for the flowers that I know that they will see at our camp. Yeah, so, as we're studying any plant, we can talk about the life cycle of the plant and the uses of the plant. And so with the mushrooms, of course, we're pretty cautious with them. We don't even like to have them actually touch them because we know that many of them are poisonous and not safe. So that's always a message we give them, that you're not going to eat them unless um, you know for sure that an adult has said it's safe to eat, or you bought them at the store. You can eat those ones. So yeah, so we also branch off from mushrooms into fungus and conchs. So the kids are looking for fungus on dead logs and old trees that are still standing. They're finding conchs, and yeah, that's kind of fascinating too. All the different kinds of mosses that grow around camp. It's different colors and different shades of green, all beautiful to look at. Um,
Nice. I thought maybe this would be a nice time to acknowledge Gail and Glenda and the work that they did, because when I visited camp, they were often my teachers around the plants and animal tracks that I saw. So I just wanted to, acknowledge the many contributions that they have made to your camp as well.
It was nice having Glenda out on the trails with us because she knows a lot of the plants by their Ojibwe names. So sometimes it takes her a minute to remember what it's called in English, because I'll be like, oh, I can't remember what this tree's called. And she's like, well, I know it in Ojibwe. But so she was a fountain of information out there.
I know you guys find you do a lot of shape work out there. I want to hear some of those activities.
we got into making structures out of sticks, 2D shapes and 3D shapes, and we hung them in the trees at camp, and the kids learned the names of all the different kinds of shapes. On our hikes along the trails, we have taken the models of 3D shapes and for the kids to use to help them identify and kind of search the trails for different shapes. So of course, some are easier to find than others. So the cone was a good one for the top of the tree. The rectangular prism just happened to be the shape of a rock we'd found. And of course, the sphere was one of the rabbit droppings we happened to see. And a cylinder was a trunk of a tree or a log. This is the second time we've done it. We've made a snow cake and used rectangular prisms of different shapes and cylinders and packed snow into them and dumped it out and stacked them up, and it looked like a really big, nice, fancy cake.
Nice.
And put different food on it to attract the birds and animals.
Okay, I know you guys did an inquiry around rabbits, and in particular, I know a story about the white rabbit. I'd love to hear that story again. So what was this inquiry, and how did it, unfold?
This was one of the first big inquiries we did once camp was kind of was set up. It had just become known that we had a camps, and there were other teachers and visitors coming to our area and just walking the trails with some of the kids. So on this one hike along the trail, they saw something that looked white far away, and they thought, okay, it's probably just garbage or a plastic bag. So they just watched it, and pretty soon it started to move. So it wasn't a bag. It turned out to be a rabbit, a white rabbit at that, because it was in the fall, and it was quite late in November, and no snow had fallen yet, but we had this white rabbit. So that was fascinating. Okay, why was it already white? Was it, don't rabbits turn white because there's snow on the ground? So that was where the inquiry started. And so we did all kinds of experiments with rabbits. We learned about rabbits, their habitat, their predators, all of that. And then um, set up different experiments, trying to see what they would eat, trying to lure them to eat something different. And so in the one experiment, we had bagels, we had carrot sticks, and I believe we had, can't remember what the third thing was we had.
Was it birdseed or popcorn that year?
Maybe it was popcorn, yeah. So anyway, everything was eaten except the rabbit, or except the carrot sticks. And so poor kids, they were so determined that rabbits eat carrots. And even though the carrots were there and we left the carrots, they're all winter and they were still there in the spring. And I said, well, rabbits really don't eat carrots. Oh yes, they eat carrots. We couldn't convince them otherwise that they did not eat carrots, the ones that were in the wild anyway. So further to our studies, we were trying to figure out, okay, why was this rabbit white? Like, how do we find out that? It's in the snow. So a little bit of investigation, and we found out that it's not the snow that causes the fur on the animals to change. It is the length of daylight that the animal is exposed to. And as fall comes, the daylight hours change and something's triggered in their brain that they will change their color. And this fall, we did see a transitioning rabbit that was partly white and partly brown. And no snow at that point, as you can see in that picture.
This is it, right?
And since then, just the other day, we actually did see a pure white rabbit in the bush. Yeah. Kids saw it when we were out hiking.
I also just want to mention that you wrote up that inquiry for Natural Curiosity. So if people are interested in learning more about the inquiry, they can find out more from Natural Curiosity as well. So I think we're going to take some questions from the audience, but I thought before we did that, a few years ago, you guys captured a few sound clips from students about their favorite spots at camp. And I thought we would listen to that before we take some questions from the audience. So here they are.
My friends made a tater-totter. I want to play with snow in the camp.
One last time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
We love our camp.
I actually meant to ask you a little bit more about some of your camouflage work. So can you tell me a little bit of some of the activities that you guys do around camouflage?
Sure. Camouflage is always a fun activity for us. In the fall, it's hunting season in our area, so that's one of the things that we try to show when we do camouflage is someone wears hunter orange on, could be a hat or a vest, and someone else is wrapped up in camouflage fabric, and we walk and just see who stands out along the trail. And it's pretty easy for the kids to tell that, yes, you can see the hunter orange, and very difficult to see someone who's dressed in camel fabric. So that's one activity we do. We also hide toys or animals in the grass. I set out a big hoop just to confine the area. We're not looking too far, and they have them hide small toys in the grass for their friends to find. Their friends are covering their eyes, so they turn around and they look and they can see if they can find the little toy animals. And another one we do in the wintertime is I have a white piece of fabric that they'll hide themselves in the snow, and we'll try to track them, find them. Also, I'd say I still use a hoop again and have counters, the red counters, on red on one side and white on the other side. And just throw them into the hoop and just see how many red can you see and how many white can you see. So that's fun. Um, yeah, so those are a couple of activities that we do for camouflage. Sarah, can you think of something else that I might have?
This year in the classroom, we had done a camouflage activity where Marge had taken pieces of yarn and strung them about the classroom. And so some of them were draped over the chairs and on papers that are hanging on the wall. And some of them were very easy to see because they stood out. They were very bright, but others were the same color as the surface they were on. So they were doing an activity like that in the classroom as opposed to out at camp.
Yeah, sorry,
Go
I
ahead,
just
Marge.
thought of something else. Was the hunter game we play too, where kind of like a hunter predator game where one person goes off and hides covered with the camouflage fabric, and the other kids are then sent to find that person. And it's always fun because they always want to be, of course, the one that's going off to hide. So yeah, we try to make it a fun, like game type activity, but you know, it's also bringing into the fact that animals are camouflage for their protection from their predators, and how they need to be their fur or their feathers are what is being camouflaged, and you can't see it in the background. And like there's different activities you can do on websites you can go to where you can look at the screen and find hidden pictures too. There's lots of activities in that area too.
Well, your hunter game made me, it kind of reflects a question in the chat, which is about safety. Someone's remarking on safety with mushrooms. Are there any other kind of like, you know, your kids are outside and they're sort of freely roaming. They really are in the bush on their own at times. Are you worried about safety? And what do you do?
Yes, we are very concerned about safety and the risk that we have. So right from the beginning of the year, we are talking about safety, and our trails are all flagged with flagging tape. So they do learn to follow the color of the flagging tape. So when they're out walking, and given instruction to stay on the path, and you go off the path when you're with an adult. So in that sense, yeah, we're always checking that even the area that we walk on, whether there's sticks poking out, got our clippers, we scan the trails, trees that are leaning over, or if there's been a windstorm or a snowstorm. Yeah, we do check.
What about the children themselves? Like, are they apprehensive, or do you not see that when they're out at camp?
Initially, they may be, yeah, they are. They're a little hesitant. They're not going to go on their own. They'll want you to walk with them. But it doesn't take long before they get very confident. And when we have visitors come, the visitors are more apprehensive than the children. They can't believe that they're freely walking the trails. They're more nervous of where they are. But yeah, like you start out the beginning of the year with reinforcing, you know, expectations and routines, and yeah, they follow it, and we haven't had any mishaps yet, so we're pretty confident. We're trying to keep them as safe as we can.
I'm sure.
One of the first activities that we do usually when we go out to camp is we'll take them off into the trails with an adult in small groups, and then someone will blow a whistle and we'll all come back to the main campsite. And so when our time is done at camp and we have to come back to school, we blow a whistle to call everyone back. So we practice that quite a bit, and the kids are very responsive to it.
Okay. Okay, what about a teacher who is thinking about taking, you know, some of the learning outside, whether it's in an outdoor classroom or not? Do you guys have any sort of words of advice that you could maybe offer up, you know, helpful hints?
To take our learning from inside outside?
Or just in general, you know, when you've spent so much time outside with with your students, you know, what would you recommend to make the transition into outdoor learning, I don't know, maybe a bit easier or effective?
Well, I always have had backpacks for various different activities that we do out at camp, and we have our first aid backpack, so we're prepared for anything that like that. So whatever we're doing, if we're doing measurement in the classroom, then I've got in my backpack different things we're going to use for measurement. Um, and if we're doing writing out at camp, I've got those kind of tools in my backpack. So I've got backpacks for several different areas. Mostly this year we've been working on the measurement so far and counting and um, letter ID and um, that kinds of things and writing group stories. But I also have backpacks with magnifiers. Um, we have backpacks where we have forest animals and some toys in them that we've taken out. So I have a backpack, and whatever we're working on in class, I can usually take some of the same materials outside
I see.
and use them out there too.
So you're sort of always prepared to take the whatever you're doing inside, outside.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And because we've increased our time outside this year, for sure, there are lots of activities carry over quite nicely.
Now I'm wondering if there's something that surprised you when you first started to, you know, do more and more land-based learning. Were you surprised about anything, you know, when it comes in regard to the children?
I yeah, I was surprised at how some behaviors improved. How once in a while they'd come out with a comment like, "Oh, this is medicine. My grandma told me about," or we make tea from this. Um, and I just am fascinated that over time they can just get so interested in what they see, just given the opportunity to be out there, like looking at moss or looking at a tiny mushroom or something on the tree, or even the tracks. Tracks is always surprising to me that they are keen as to figure out what's there and where's it going, and noticing that it's might be chewing on something. Yeah, there's lots of
Yeah.
surprises.
It's because there's visitors. There's visitors at camp. They want to know who is there.
Right.
Speaking of visitors at camp, someone is asking about families. I know we've talked about this before, but you know, how do you involve? Because I know you do. How do you involve families at camp?
We have Classroom Seesaw account where we share pictures of some of the learning that happens out there. And in past years, pre-COVID, we've also tried to invite the parents out at least once a year so that their children can show them around camp, show them their favorite place. Because lots of parents, when we do parent-teacher conferences at the beginning of the year, they're talking about camp and how that's all they hear from their students, from their children. So, yeah.
And what about fall harvest this year? Were parents able to join or no, eh?
Not this year, no. It was the COVID protocols.
Okay. But pre-COVID, families were quite involved, right?
Yeah, we've had wellness walks out there at camp where we've organized a walk along the trail, and we had them stop at kind of like a little station and read a card and um, do activities on the card. And parents love it. They are so appreciative that it's that we have this for children to come to.
Okay. All right, a question just popped up that says, how do you meet the individual learning needs for the child who may be behind the rest of the group or not as engaged in a learning activity as the rest of the class? So how do you handle a situation like that?
Well, we have one special needs child in our class for the past couple of years, wheelchair, and but he is involved in just about every possible way we can. having a wheelchair and taking it down a trail is pretty hard, but we have a couple of areas where he can go to. He's being pushed on his in a wheelchair. He's not wheeling himself. So in that sense, we involve him as much as we can. And now that the snow is here, it's much easier because he can be in a sled and pulled along the trails. But we really don't have children who aren't engaged. I'm trying to think now. It's not a big issue. They they are keen to do the activities we do, and yeah, it's not a big issue. They want to be there. They want to do the activities. Sarah, what are you thinking?
The students are like they have all their sensory needs met when we're out at camp. So if their mind is wandering a little bit, they can touch the leaves and the sticks and they can hear the birds, but then they always come back to what we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Marge? You and I talked. I mean, we briefly talked about this the other day about sometimes taking learning outside. There's an apprehension from teachers because how are you going to meet the curriculum needs? So how do you deal with that situation?
Well, it is a juggling act sometimes. There's a lot of pressure to cover what's in the curriculum, but I think that all the activities I have planned, I'm carrying over from the classroom that I would have been doing in the classroom. So the math, the literacy, the science inquiries we're doing. Um, yeah, I feel sometimes I'm juggling time wise. There's just not enough time to cover much as I want to, as thoroughly as I want to. Um, and it's a little different for sure doing literacy out at camp as opposed to inside a classroom. But as much as we can, we've still continued with letter recognition, sound recognition, and the read alouds, all of that kind of thing, and writing stories together. Um, and the math seems a little easier. The patterning, the measurement, the counting, the sorting, um, all things that can be done. You just have to use your imagination a bit, and of course it's different once in the fall materials are more readily available there as in the compared to when the snow's on the ground. It's a little bit different. Today we had them out and there's fresh snow today, so we had them. Okay, you have to I'll go find a stick. Well, first buried under the snow, so we're going to branches of trees that are fallen over and finding sticks, and they all had to write their name in the snow. Well, that was done like nothing. They just found a stick and found a place where the snow hadn't been messed up and wrote their name. So I mean, it's a little different in the winter, but I think it's still workable. I sometimes feel pressure, but most often I'm able to cover what I need to cover.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question. It's kind of related to curriculum, but more so curiosity. It's in the chat. Someone's asking, what are some ways that student interest and curiosity is incorporated into your classroom? And then they're saying specifically math and science.
Student curiosity incorporated.
Yeah.
Okay, well, usually everything that we do comes from what the kids are interested in, or we kind of can direct them in that way. So right now we've been focusing on the animal tracks. So they are keen about animal tracks. So that wasn't a big push, but so from the animal tracks, just learning what they are, of course we're going to measure them. So that's our math, and we're going to try to count, and we're going to try to figure out a story, like where are these tracks going, and is there something chasing this animal? Is it in a hurry, or is it just going slow? So all kinds of questions come up. So yeah, we try to follow what the kids have come up with. Like one time going to camp, we came across a big puddle. And of course, everybody who's got boots on goes through the puddle. So the next time we came, there was no puddle. Okay, so where's the puddle? It was just here. And then, okay, so they're surmising, like, where's the puddle? Well, some of them were thinking, okay, it's just gone. It must have jumped into the ditch, because there's water in the ditch. So they come up with, kind of ideas that are at their level. So we talked about and tried different evaporation activities. So yeah, we try to go on what the students are thinking and they're interested in, and
So
usually it works pretty good.
it sounds like basically nearly everything is sort of rooted in your students' curiosity. It guides the way.
Yes, we try very much to be that way.
Okay, well, we're at the end of our time. Do you guys have any final thoughts you want to share with everyone?
I would just say that if you're in a position to try to take your class outside, and even if it's just doing activities in the playground, like with COVID, we have had to be limited to our playground for quite a while because of limiting on group size. So of course we're in our playground trying to do activities, and that can work too. We happen to be lucky enough to be out in the country, and the nature is just really close. But I would encourage you to take your class outside, and if you're lucky enough to set up a camp, just keep it simple, and your kids will appreciate getting outside, and it does a lot for their mental health. We found that since we've been doing this for quite a few years, that it's a way to release. And just today, one child commented about how they were very happy that being at camp, it was a peaceful place to come to. So I would encourage you to try it.
And I have been there many times. I would agree. It's very peaceful. It is. Okay, well, I want to thank you both so much for all of your time and energy and effort in putting this together. Whenever I ask if you want to do something, you seem to be willing. So I really appreciate our partnership. There are a few people I want to say some quick thank yous to. The first is the N.S. Robertson Foundation. The second is the Flavel Foundation. They are who is making these webinars possible. I want to thank Dana Allen. I want to thank Verna. I want to thank Bev Caswell and Julie Comey for contributing to this. I want to thank Heather Campbell for all of her support, and I want to thank your principal, Anna Demchek, as well. So that's it. I just want to thank everyone for joining. And again, thank you, Sara and Marge. I really appreciate this, and I continue to work. I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, everyone.